Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Unless you've been stranded on a desert island somewhere, by now you've probably heard about the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. And this is not going to be a political talk. I don't care what you think about Trump, whether you like him or don't like him. I just want to talk about the assassination attempt on him. I heard today on the news, the head of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheetah, was allowed to resign today because of the attempt on President Trump's life. And what was really sad about all this is a firefighter and a husband and a father died in this shooting. It could have easily been prevented and should have been. There obviously wasn't adequate protection for the former president and this man was allowed to shoot multiple times even after he'd been spotted in advance. And I don't care what your politics are at this point. There was no excuse for this to ever to have happened. This could have been prevented. That man was located before the first shots ever rang out. He could have been stopped beforehand, and had the people listen to the crowd that was there that day that was telling them there was a man up on the roof. This could have been prevented, and it's sad, it's shameful, and it should never happen again. This kind of thing. And I do believe the person should have stepped down. They were allowed to resign. I would have fired them, and they should have been fired a week ago. Their performance before both parties of Congress yesterday were calling for their Democrats and Republicans were calling for them to step down. So this is not political in nature, but when that shooting occurred, my first impulse was that he was seriously injured. I'd been watching on TV. I saw that he wasn't, and I'm sure that was if that doesn't inspire you a little bit, president or former president of the United States standing up, raising his fist, and telling you to fight after he's got blood on his ear and on his face, and he went through all that, and he's getting up, and that was just kind of a proud moment as an American, or it should be. Doesn't matter what party he is at this point. That should be a source of inspiration to every American. It's part of our heritage, that the courage under fire, and our country's been known a lot of that over the years. But when that happened that day, I couldn't help but think of other assassinations I've seen in my life. Being the age I am, I saw Kennedy. I remember the Kennedy assassination. I was very young. I would have probably been about 4 then. Most of what I remember about the Kennedy assassination is the day of the assassination, I was in a doctor's office, and I was actually supposed to get vaccinated that day for something or other. I remember that. I remember it coming on the news back that day out in the waiting rooms. They had music piped out in the waiting rooms coming across the speaker. And the music that they were playing, of course, is your typical elevator music. On one of the stations used to play that kind of music back then. And they interrupted the music and came on there and announced about the assassination of President Kennedy. And I remember it. I remember people crying in the room there, and I didn't fully understand what happened. And then the next few days after that, along with all the coverage of Kennedy's assassination plus his funeral, I remember it preempted the cartoons I was going to watch. So of course I didn't understand all that stuff back then. I was understandably upset about my cartoons being taken off air. And I really didn't understand it all, but I do remember it, and I remember the reactions to it by people around me. I didn't fully understand them, and looking back on them, I do. And then I also remember in 1981, President Ronald Reagan was assassinated there in Washington, and I was in college then, and I had just gotten out of class that day, and came back and dropped over in front of my room, and one of my buddies come down and said, "Did you hear Reagan was shot?" No, I hadn't heard anything about it. I had just come from school, and he came and told me about it, and I went somewhere as quick as I could. I wanted to see a TV, and and I wanted to see what was going on. And John Hinckley had shot the president then, and all I remembered from that was that the last time there'd been an assassination, the man died. So I figured Reagan was going to be dead too, and in fact, he lived through that. And that was pretty inspirational to Americans. I think of either party, and so I think this shooting with Donald Trump, it was inspirational in much the same way that Reagan lived through the shooting in Washington, D.C. in 1981. I think this in some ways inspires Americans now that one of our leaders, somebody we send to Washington to represent us, can show that kind of courage and resilience in the face of physical injury and still bounce back and try to lead the country, try to show them the way. Anyway, that's just what I wanted to talk to you about. I didn't want to get too political on this, but it's a shame a good man died the other day. And it was a shame because it could have prevented. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that to you today. I'll catch you later. Bye now.